My name is Kurt English. I'm here with Scott Piotr,
Hey
and
guys.
we got a lot to talk about. It's been an action packed 10 weeks since Donald Trump was inaugurated as President of the United States. I was there in D.C., although they canceled the ceremony. It was wonderful. And there's so much to talk about in California that we'll just jump into it. One of the things that has been very controversial is the voter fraud. And Scott, uh, there's a lot of controversy about whether the ballots are all from real voters or whether they're fake. And there's a report that says 1/5 of voters in California in the 2024 election in Orange County were non-citizens, fake voters, or not valid registrations. So I'm thinking, maybe you should sue, and maybe you actually won your race.
Well, that is an interesting concept. I mean, they're saying basically 25% of the votes were fraudulent in somehow, form or fashion. And this was, um, let's see, they said, I'm reading the article. This article comes from, a hat tip, by the way, to uh, it's called Joe Hoft. It's his blog, and it was from Monday. Um, but the landmark study was a study based on what a lot of the uh, voter integrity guys are doing here in Orange County. And they figured, gee, if Orange County is one of those areas that's supposed to be conservative, right? It's not. And it's got all the same rules that allow voters or Democrats to cheat at every chance they get, right? Everywhere in California, the ideal laws are going to be ones that make it really easy to vote and really hard to cheat. But the Democrats like laws that make it real easy to cheat as well as to vote. And they use, oh, it's got to be easy to vote as an excuse to make it easy to cheat. So some of the things that they're talking about are that either the voters were non-citizens or just totally fake voters, that they did not live at the address they reportedly voted from, and some of them don't have social security number or it's the same as somebody else's social security number. And then there's 77,000 ballots were counted that cannot be reconciled with any voter who actually voted. I mean, that's kind of like the basic thing. When they switch to this whole mail-in voting, where every single voter gets a ballot, no matter what, oh, let's throw a bunch of real official ballots out there and allow people to just fill them in and cheat, submit them in a drop box somewhere, and pretend that a voter voted. Um, you would think that the main thing when they came in via the mail or the ballot drop boxes would be, is this ballot from a legitimate voter? Has he already voted? Is he? Now, they're not taking the time, let's be honest, in determining whether they're citizens or not. If they're registered to vote and that ballot comes in and they can associate that ballot with a registered voter, they don't care if they count it, as long as the signature is close. And what they're saying is that in Orange County, we had 77,000 ballots in the sample that can't even be reconciled with a voter. Why would they count it if they don't know where it's from, or if they can't identify the voter that's there? I
Because
mean,
that's how Democrats win elections, is through cheating.
so 298,000 votes in Orange County, and again, I don't think that this. I think this is a sample survey that they did, and they're extrapolating it to the countywide. So we're under the assumption, of course, that they used a valid sample and a big enough sample. But that's 21% of the vote, or just over, 1 in 5 voters that voted were invalid. Well, I didn't lose by that much. I lost by 14%. So heck, if those 21% went off for the Democrat, I won my election in the assembly last November for the 73rd district.
I
How do
think
we
you should
fix that?
send a letter to the district attorney of Orange County with that study and asking for an investigation.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if those guys, and face it, when I mean, I would love to see another study
And
that
and
that
because you're
went.
on the Central Committee in Orange County, you should put forth a resolution next month uh, to ask the district attorney to investigate.
That would be the Republican Central Committee, and that's actually a
Yes.
very good idea. You know, I'm sure that their excuse, as it always is that, well, okay, let's say that this study is accurate and that there were 21% of the votes that were not valid votes, right, for whatever the reason. How do you know they all voted for Democrats? And of course, I would love to sit there and have a study that shows that these fraudulent votes are Democrats because they are pretty much the only party that cheats. And they certainly are cheating on an industrial scale, and they proved it with Biden. I mean, nobody elected Biden. Give me a break. It's like, okay, people sit there and make fun of people that's, they're election deniers. Let's put it this way. Uh, Kurt, is there tax fraud?
Of course.
Is there bank fraud?
Yep.
Is there voter fraud?
Yep.
Of course, you'd have to be a moron to say that there's not voter fraud. The big question is there enough voter fraud that actually changed the results of the election? And this study shows that, yeah, there may have been enough votes to change the outcome of the election. So what do we do about it, Kurt?
Uh, it's very important, hopefully, in the reconciliation bill, that the Congress passes ballot security nationwide and Trump will sign it. Because the Democrats will, of course, sue and forum shop and judge shop. So, um,
Yeah, there's
you know,
been some good news on the judicial front. We can go over that later. Okay, so they're going
so,
to take and say
but
what Trump's going to say. You have to show voter ID and you have to guarantee that no non-citizens are voting in federal elections. And they leave it up to
no,
the state to figure out how.
I think all elections, any election in the United States, the federal government has jurisdiction
Yeah, but
to.
the federal government does not have jurisdiction over state elections or local elections.
Then they'll have to hold them at different times than the federal elections, so that will never happen.
Well, that's the advantage, right? If during the federal election you have to show voter ID, how are you going to sit there and say, okay, now go out the door to the building next door and you can vote in the statewide and local elections and you don't have to show voter ID? Of course, it's impractical to have two elections or two election locations. And it's like, then it would be fun to set up cameras, right? So you got the federal elections in one door and you have the statewide and all the other elections in the other door and get some photographic video proof showing how somebody goes into the state side, but they don't go in the federal side, and then start counting who and how many of those there are, and see if you can find out. Hey, yeah, gee, this says 21% of the vote. Sure enough, we got 21% of the people, extra voters on the state side that we don't have on the federal side. Surprise, surprise.
No, it's
But
all
that would be
fraud.
a great idea. But the
All
same
right.
thing kind of applies to. Can we talk about Huntington Beach?
Yeah, so let's flip over to that. Huntington Beach is a city in Orange County, coastal Southern California, very famous for surfing. Jack Haley was one of the early surfers, and he had a restaurant there that's wonderful. And his son was a player for the Lakers and the Chicago Bulls. And neither of them are no longer alive, so it's a third generation business. But in this place in Huntington Beach, they have a conservative city council, even though it's California, and they voted to require voter ID. Of course, the Democrats in the state of California didn't like that. They sued, and Huntington Beach has won. And the pouty, liberal, corrupt attorney general of California wants to appeal the decision, Scott.
Okay, so first of all, one of the things that they had a city attorney, Michael Gates, who had some huevos, right? And he convinced the conservative city council that, yeah, we can fight this. And if you recall on our podcast here, oh, maybe you weren't there, maybe it was just Mike and I. We actually had Michael Gates, the city attorney from Huntington Beach, on the show. And one of the things that he was explaining was, and for those of you that don't know, Huntington Beach passed a law and changed, it was voted on by the residents to modify the city charter of Huntington Beach. And it now requires by the 2026 election for the city council to implement a voter ID program for all municipal elections. And so immediately Rob Bonta, the whiny, liberal wacko pretend attorney general that we have here in California, file a lawsuit against him, try to get an injunction, and the judge said, "Hell no, this is legit." And now we just had a ruling come down on Monday that basically said, um, no, they're actually entitled to do this, and it doesn't violate state law. And when we had Michael Gates on there, he explained that in the Constitution of California, they actually have a specific paragraph that says that cities, charter cities, are allowed to set up all of their own election rules for their municipal elections. And the state doesn't have jurisdiction over it. The Constitution does. And so the legislature passed a law saying, no voter ID because we don't like you and we want to cheat. And Huntington Beach said, we're still going to have voter ID when we implement our elections in 26. And they said, no, you're not. And they filed a lawsuit and they lost. So the courts have agreed that legislation can't change the California Constitution, and that the legislation that that Bonta and the legislature and everybody passed, outlawing and preventing municipalities from having voter ID, only applies to non-charter cities and counties. It does not apply to actually even charter counties are probably under the state law, the legislation, because the California Constitution only allows or only specifies that charter cities can set their own rules regarding their municipal elections. So the hope would be, like you're saying, the unspoken, wink, wink on the election would be is that, hey, it's impractical to set up a different election for the municipality vote, to vote for your Huntington Beach City Council and city attorney, and then have a separate election or a separate location to vote for everybody else. And so the thought is they're going to be in there and they're going to vote for the city attorney and city council, and they will show voter ID. And then at the same time, they're going to vote for the federal and state elections on their ballot. And but they're not going to be allowed to ask for voter ID for those elections. So if somebody came in and said, hey, I want to vote for my state and county elections, but I don't want to vote for the city elections, theoretically, they're not going to be allowed to ask for voter ID. They're only going to be allowed to do that for the municipal elections. But the
Yeah, but
practical
Scott,
reality of it is,
hold on. That's not realistic. They may say that to lie and cheat, but how do you know what they're doing in a secret ballot? You don't know. So I don't think that's going to fly.
no, but I agree with you. I think it's one of those things that the reality of it is anybody that's going to walk into Huntington Beach and show a voter ID and vote for state and federal law, we know are going to be legitimate voters. And if they walk in and say, I don't want to show my voter ID, they say, well, then you can't vote in the municipal election. And they say, okay, and they get to vote in the federal and the county elections, then you're going to wonder, this guy must not be a legitimate voter because he doesn't want to show voter ID. And so now you can't officially do it, but poll watchers can tag that guy and sit there and go, oh, we're going to put him on the question list and we're going to see if he's a legitimate voter or not. So you get the practical reality, and that's part of the problem, or part of what has to be decided now that the courts have agreed with the city. The city has to, in the next less than 12 months, because we got statewide elections in June of next year, June of 26. And well, I guess if they don't have any municipal elections on the June ballot, it might not be till November. But the city of Huntington Beach is going to have to actually have now, they're going to have to implement that charter initiative, which was approved by the voters. And the voters' initiative that they passed allowed them flexibility on how they implement that. So that way they can work with the, registrar of voters and work out all those details. But that's progress. Wet Your Pants Bonta lost again after he's sitting there. We're going to save the quality. We're going to save the elections. We're going to save that voter. Let's be clear. The Democrat Party wants to cheat. And what they're doing is they're accusing the Republicans by Republicans requiring voter ID. They're accusing the Republicans of trying to limit who can vote. make it
Yes, we want
hard
to limit
to
that to
vote.
legal voters only.
But see, now the Democrats, you know how the rule goes, right? They always accuse you of something that they do. So
Yes.
what happened is Democratic Party, of course, is the party of slavery. They're the party of Jim Crow. They're the party of voter rules and regulations to prevent blacks from voting. And after the Civil War, after the Northern Union troops finally left the South, they started their Jim Crow laws. Except at first, it wasn't just Jim Crow; it was just the Ku Klux Klan. That's the Democratic Party's enforcement arm, and they would put up all these extra rules, poll taxes. They would tell the white people you go vote here and the black people you go vote over there. And of course, there wasn't even a poll over there. And so they did anything they could to prevent blacks from voting. And uh, and that's what they're accusing the Republicans of doing by requiring voter ID, as though black people, for some reason, can't get an ID, which of course is a fallacy. And if you ask the average black person on the street, I'm sure he'd sit there and say, "Yeah, you can't live without an ID. What kind of a moron doesn't have an ID?" So, they're just using it as an excuse, and they're accusing us of being racist and discriminatory, Republicans, because we want to, like you say, have only legitimate voters vote, have only people that are actual citizens vote. I'm sorry, I'm rambling on.
You are.
What? Do
All right. Well, let's change gears. We talked about voter fraud, and there's lots of it in California. But the problem is when you have voter fraud, you get incompetent people elected, supposedly. And we have a number of incompetent elected officials in California, and let's review their incompetence quickly. Uh,
Wait a second. Wait a second. You're talking about Democrats, right?
of course, well, when
And
I
and
tell you
this
where it is, you'll know they're Democrats. So,
and the
as
state is ruled by Democrats. So basically,
well,
what you're saying
we're
is
talking about
this.
cities now. So, let me get to the cities. So, first, I want to talk about Los Angeles, my childhood home. Is those of you who are from Los Angeles who know the areas. I went to Rinaldi and Tulsa Elementary School, in Granada Hills, Portola Junior High in Tarzana, Taft High School in Woodland Hills,
Didn't you flunk
Caltech
out of
in
that school?
Pasadena. No,
I'm just kidding.
not exactly. Um, I'll bring the honors next time. Caltech in Pasadena, and then USC afterwards. So uh, Los
So you've
Angeles.
got good long Los Angeles credentials. Okay,
Yeah,
I got
so
it.
once upon a time, Los Angeles was an okay place to live. You knew the areas to stay out of. Now you got to know the areas you can go into because the rest of it's garbage. But the city council there is raising utility rates. So if you still live in Los Angeles, get ready for a 54% rate increase to cover the costs of the overspending of Los Angeles into near bankruptcy.
What
54%, Scott.
what's going up? Your electricity bill or your trash bill or what? Power bill? What's going up?
Yeah, your utilities, like water, trash, all that stuff. It's
So
ridiculous.
DWP, water, trash, and power are going up.
Well,
54%?
power is Southern California Edison in Orange and Los Angeles counties.
No, Los Angeles County has DWP, or at least the city of LA, which is most of the county.
Well, they provide the electricity too now.
Department of Water and Power, yeah.
Okay,
That's why
then
it's
guess what?
DWP.
There's your 54% increase. So,
It's a
and
D
remember last year they imposed that we discussed on this show a $28 to $128 minimum fee if you have an electrical hookup before you use 1 watt of energy. So that's in
20.
addition to the state tax.
So the state tax has gone up. That's their carbon tax or whatever they're calling it. No, wait a second. That's not even the carbon tax. They're talking about raising the electricity bill even further with a carbon tax. The one you're talking about is their pay for the infrastructure tax on top of the use fees, and now it's going up 50% more. I mean, how are people supposed to have power for their microwave to heat up their lunch, which they can't afford anymore?
Well, that's not the only incompetence in Los Angeles. You know about uh, the state we talked about on the show, $24 billion of money spent on homeless programs, allegedly, that no one can account for. Same thing in Los Angeles City, $2 billion was allegedly spent on homeless programs, and nobody can track a nickel of it. So the new attorney general, U.S. attorney for the Central District of California, which includes Los Angeles, Bill Asali, who used to be in the state assembly, is going to
Great guy.
audit uh, Los Angeles, and he's threatening to impose a receivership to control the money because they're so corrupt. And as some of our listeners know, this has happened on more than one occasion by judges in Compton with their school board and their city council because there's been so much theft and corruption of government money in Compton.
Okay. So let me get this straight. We have incompetent boobs at the state level and the city level. Karen Bass.
And in Los Angeles, yes. And remember, this is on top of the Department of Water and Power failing for 11 months to fill the reservoir at the top of the hill in Pacific Palisades, which, through gravity, let water go to all the fire hydrants.
Yeah, I mean, I've never seen a fire hydrant actually on fire before. I love this picture behind me. But okay, so Karen Bass, incompetent boob mayor of LA,
Communist.
and she's got $24 billion of state money that she got from her
No,
buddy
no.
Newsom.
You're mixing the state money, which is Gavin Newsom, and the city money, which is $2 billion for the city of Los Angeles.
But that 24 billion that came from the state, part of that is federal money, as I understand it.
Don't know the answer to that question.
But isn't that why Bill Asali is going to audit it because it's misuse of federal funds?
No, I think there's probably plenty. I'm not going to get into the weeds of the legal analysis, but
or is it just graft and other things that are happening?
Just money laundering and theft.
So,
all right. So we talked about Los Angeles. Everybody knows how incompetent Los Angeles is, especially those of us who used to live there and are immigrants from Los Angeles. But let's move west to the city of Santa Monica. Now, Scott, I was here in 1984 when they had the Olympics, and it was
you were just a spring chicken, right? You were a teenager at that point.
It was managed by Peter Ueberroth, who was actually competent and a businessman. So the Olympics actually made a profit in 1984. But now there had been discussions with the Olympics coming to Los Angeles and the Southern California in 2028 about having beach volleyball be hosted in the city of Santa Monica. For those who are in a different part of the state.
That's what happened, right? In 84?
No. I'm talking about now in 2028.
Yeah, so but for those of you, didn't they host that in 84?
I don't know. But okay. I'm talking about 2028. I'm not talking about 1984. Okay. So in 2028, Santa Monica was supposed to host the beach volleyball games in the Olympics. However, for those of you who are not from Southern California, Santa Monica, Hollywood, Manhattan Beach, Long Beach, they're all separate cities from Los Angeles City. So Santa Monica has its own left-wing communist city council and has for 40 years. I mean, in the 90s,
they're not just incompetent Democrats; they're socialists, communists.
Yeah, in the 80s and 90s, they were sending fact-finding missions to Nicaragua when they had the Sandinistas and the Contras. So these people are nuts.
We've referred to them as the People's Republic of Santa Monica.
Yes. So the city has wasted so much money, a common theme like Los Angeles, that they're nearly bankrupt. And the Olympic Committee and the organizers have seen the homeless people, the crime, and the urban decay of Santa Monica, which used to be a very affluent place. And so the Olympic Committee has canceled Santa Monica's ability to host that event because they don't have confidence that the city will keep people safe and can manage a 2-car funeral. They're so incompetent.
Okay, wait a minute. So is it because of the homeless and the drug use and all the crap that's going on the beach that they don't want to invite TV cameras to?
It's not just the beach, it's throughout the whole city.
But is it because the city's not presentable? Is that why they're not going to be doing it? Or does Santa Monica say they don't want to do it?
Yeah, or safe, or the city may go bankrupt and there may be no police protection.
So did the city decline or did LA decline?
Well, Olympic organizers basically told them, hey, you guys aren't competent enough to do this, to be relied upon.
Okay, so the city didn't turn the city of LA down. The city of Santa Monica didn't turn the city of LA down. LA said, "You're not, you can't rise to the challenge. We're not
Yeah,
here."
they couldn't meet the requirements, so the
So where are they
city
going to go?
somewhere else.
Hey, how about Newport Beach? Right behind you, we have Newport Beach. We have
There you
Balboa Pier
go.
right there.
Huntington Beach, where our friends have voter ID, would be a great place. All right, so going from incompetent cities, of which there are many in California because they're run by Democrats, let's talk about our insurance commissioner. This guy is not only incompetent, but he doesn't show up to work. So there was a hearing, and State Farm, who canceled 70,000 homeowners insurance last year in 2024, now is asking our insurance commission for a 38% rate increase during a public hearing. And the insurance commissioner, Ricardo Lara, another DEI hire, didn't even bother to
Democrat,
show up to
Democrat.
the hearing. He didn't even show up. And this is not the first time he's no showed his job. So, Scott, we're paying this guy and he doesn't work. I mean, he's like a Democrat. He thinks he's on welfare.
It's a no-show job. Hey, they promised him it's a no-show job. What's going on?
So, in any case, so California ratepayers may get hit with a 38% increase
Hold on a second. I
in
got
their
all
homeowner
this
rates.
noise in the background. Okay.
38% rate
So
increase.
now people should understand that when State Farm gets permission. So what happened was with all those wildfires that were all Karen Bass and Newsom's fault, right? They didn't do fuel modification. They didn't even fill the freaking reservoir. And you ended up with fire hydrants on fire, along with losing, what did we end up losing? 14,000 homes, something like that. So,
13,000.
so there's a lot of, you're right, it's 13,000 homes, but there are, I think, 14,000 buildings total.
But, Scott, there were 270,000 claims to FEMA for money.
That's another issue, but it's like 4 times the amount of, not even 4 times, we're talking about 20 times the amount of homes that died or got whacked, and there were 20 times as many claims. No, there's no fraud here. Democrats are probably preventing Doge from stopping that too. But let's go back. So, so because of their total incompetence and mismanagement, and the fact is that um, a lot of people could not get insurance even before the fire, right? And so they had to go to the state of California for their fire insurance, and I don't remember what they called it, but it was the insurance company of last resort. So if you couldn't get your insurance company or any other private insurance company to insure you, you went to the state, and the state's broke. Oh, surprise, surprise! They're incompetent in managing and preventing fires, and now they're also incompetent in managing an insurance company. So all of the premiums that they got on that insurance of last resort weren't enough to pay all the damages and claims that have come up. And so part of the deal was is that all of the other insurance companies, in order to do business in the state, they had to agree to pay any overages that California was negligent in collecting. And they're responsible for 50%. So for instance, I'm a State Farm ratepayer. So my house didn't burn down. I don't have a house that lives in a fire prone area. I'm not in a high hazard area, and I pay a certain amount for my premium as a result. Now I'm going to have to pay 34% more because State Farm is having to pony into this California fund, and I'm going to get nailed for it. That sucks. Why, I didn't have a home in a high fire, hazard area. I didn't collect too little premiums to pay for the losses. I didn't mismanage the fuel in the forest and not have the proper water, et cetera, to be able to fight the fires when they did start. Why should I have to pay it? But I guess the surprising part is, Kurt, you're paying the other half, or actually, all the California taxpayers are paying the other half. The insurance company ratepayers are paying half, and the taxpayers are paying the other half. So I get hit twice as a taxpayer and a ratepayer. But you're going to get hit too. It just hasn't happened to your insurance company yet. Every single insurance company is going to be going in front of Laura and asking for the same rate increase. Now, State Farm has kind of broken the mold here, and I think everybody's going to be asking for 34%,
38.
38%.
All right. Well,
Even
the
worse.
problem, Scott, is these rising costs, and we'll talk about some of them in a bit, are driving businesses out of California. There's more unemployment, more businesses leaving, higher gas prices, and we've talked about Chevron closing up shop in California. They've just laid off 600 employees based in California as the company prepares to move operations to Houston. That's in
Oh, I'm
Texas, Scott,
shocked.
where they don't
I'm
have a state
shocked.
income tax.
It's the land of the oil barons too in Texas. I don't know why Chevron even bothered to come to California. Doesn't Chevron
I believe
operate
they
one of the few
started here.
refineries?
I believe they started here when they actually allowed oil drilling in California.
Don't doesn't Chevron operate one of the few refineries left in this state?
Well, for now, but we'll see.
Okay, so they're not closing up that shop. They're just
We'll
moving their
see.
corporate headquarters and all their employees over so
Well,
far.
we don't know. I mean, they may just decalifornianize their lives. We'll see.
Okay, but these guys are, I mean, these guys aren't the truck drivers and the guys that pump gas or sell you cigarettes at the convenience stores. These are the high paid corporate jobs, right? That are leaving.
People that might pay the 9 to 13% state income tax in California
So
that are now leaving.
we're basically taking the middle class and we're chasing them out of the freaking state. And the only people that are going to be left are the the rich, the seniors, and the service class, the poor.
Government workers, uh, restaurant workers, and hotel workers. That's it, just like Hawaii.
What a bunch of stupid idiots.
Well, but they've been
Oh,
doing
but
that
I
for
repeat
35
myself.
years. Manufacturers have been leaving California for decades. And we had the idiotic minimum wage increase last year, nearly a year ago, to $20 an hour. And Gavin Newsom lied like he often does and says, well, this will create 10,000 new jobs. But the truth is that 23,100 fast food jobs have disappeared from California since Gavin Newsom's minimum wage increase, Scott.
That's right. The minimum wage happened almost a year ago today, right? I mean, wasn't it April of last year that went into effect?
Yes.
So now they've got studies. I don't even think the studies are a full year. I think they're only for like 8 months. And they said, how many jobs did we lose?
23,100.
So if you kept your job, if you were lucky, you got a raise. But if you're one of those 23,000, you got crapped on and you can't work there anymore. I know I'm in the construction business, and we've got laborers, and we're paying the laborers about, they're semi-skilled. We're paying them $25 an hour, roughly, at the low end. And they're kind of like, well, look, I could be a fast food guy and I can make $20 an hour. Why do I want to, bust my butt out here in the sun all day and only make 25? And we're kind of like, you know what? If you want to go work for them, feel free, go ahead. Because it is a different skill set. You're not building stuff, you're flipping burgers and you're having to do a lot of things that are a little different. And we've lost a couple employees. Guess what? They've come back. But they're all asking for more money because the fast food guys are getting more money. It's didn't I hear that the same board that did that is asking for an increase above $20 now?
Yeah, there's this board that can increase it even more, and you can assume that will happen. But Scott, the day that increase went in to effect, a double double combo at In-N-Out Burger went from 840 to 1040 in one day.
Yeah, and now it's over that. It's more like $12. And it's absolutely crazy. So your burgers cost what, 40% more thanks to Gavin Newsom.
Oh, it gets worse than that. I went into a Five Guys burger and fries a week or two ago, and I thought, oh well, I haven't had one of these in a while. A hamburger at Five Guys is $12, and large fries was
Oh,
$8. And I just walked out. I said, I'm not paying $20 for a hamburger and fries. I'm just not doing it.
that's one thing that I have to say about In-N-Out is they've always been an incredibly fantastic product for a reasonable price. And even now, with all of the fast food pricing going up, theirs is still at the cheaper end, and they still have, I think, the best hamburger and fries that are out there. So they have a very simple menu. They do it absolutely perfect, very, very, very well, and they charge you a reasonable amount of money for it. So I think In-N-Out is, unless your In-N-Out store is in Oakland where the crime is so bad that they can't afford to keep the doors open, which is the very first, wasn't it? The very first restaurant that In-N-Out has ever closed in their 60-year
Yep.
history.
Yeah, but they didn't want to be very far east because the lady who runs it wanted to be able to travel a day trip to each location, and she's moving to Tennessee now.
Well, that is one of the things that they did is they, you know, like like they say, they don't even have a freezer at their stores, right? Because all their food is so fresh, it just gets in there, it gets refrigerated, and it had to be within 1 day's trip of the not only the headquarters but also their warehouse where they shipped all their merchandise and raw materials from. And so they've opened those kinds of warehouses now in a couple other places, Texas, Colorado, Tennessee. But you're right, the corporate headquarters is splitting, and they're going to have half of it in Tennessee and half of it in Monterey Park or wherever in California here.
Baldwin Park for now, where the first In-N-Out was in 1948, but that you watch, that won't last long. So, Scott, you mentioned that crime caused an In-N-Out to close, and we've got a bunch of crime stories. After all, it is Democrat-run California. So there was an illegal alien. Democrats love illegal aliens. An illegal alien youth soccer coach was arrested for the murder of a 13-year-old boy while he was under investigation for sexually assaulting a different teenage boy.
And these Democrats are fighting these deportations. Do they really want to have these kind of criminals
Well,
here?
these
I mean, they
judges
shouldn't
and
have
these
been here in the first
Democrat
place.
politicians should host this guy at their house if they want to keep him here, especially those that have teenage boys. I'm sure they're okay with that, right, Scott?
I'm sorry, I really shouldn't be laughing because, there's a couple of victims here. You had a murder victim and you had a sexual molestation victim, both young teenage boys that wouldn't have happened if the Democrats and Biden hadn't invited that illegal alien into this
Yeah,
country.
but Scott, we're going to start having some frontier justice here. That dad of one of those boys is lucky that the police caught the illegal alien before he did.
I'm sure. I'm sure. If it were me in that situation,
Oh
I'd
yeah.
have a hard time restraining myself. So
So, but that's
you
not the only crime incident we had. There's a small business owner that was run down and killed by felons that were fleeing after looting his store yesterday. Thanks, Gavin
the
Newsom and the
the
Democrats.
the business owner was run down and killed?
Yeah, he probably chased after him or something, and ran him down and killed him.
Wow. Wow.
And then we have another family pharmacy that's closed in supposedly safe Orange County. This is the second family pharmacy in the city of Laguna Hills, California, that closed. The first one was El Toro Pharmacy. And for decades, El Toro Pharmacy delivered medicines and prescriptions to elderly people in Leisure World that needed, somebody to help them. Maybe they couldn't really drive much anymore.
That's
And
called
they
Laguna
provided
Woods now, not Leisure World. Come on.
same thing. But the point is that the elderly people needed a delivery pharmacy, and
And
they
the best
got
service.
robbed so much that they just gave up and closed in 2024. Now, Laguna Hills Pharmacy, in a medical building, probably three-quarters of a mile or a mile, maybe a mile away from that same location, and across from a nice residential neighborhood, closed for the same reason. They were getting robbed at night. They were getting robbed during the day when the husband and wife, who'd been there for decades, probably in their 60s or 70 years old now, were forced to either
So
shoot them
this
or
this
be
isn't
robbed.
downtown San Francisco we're talking about, where Rite Aid and all these other people have left.
No, this is
This
a
is
family pharmacy in Laguna Hills with near million
so
$200,000
so
houses.
so they basically can't afford to sustain the losses that they're taking in these stores, maybe like a Rite Aid might be able to spread them over a few more stores. These guys can't, and so
Well,
they're out
but
of
think about
business.
it. You're 70 years old. You're a husband and wife. You want to live and spend time with your grandchildren. Why bother? Why try to run a family
Have you
business
got?
in the state of
Have you
California?
gone? Have you gone into a drugstore lately? You go into these drugstores and you just want to buy some Tylenol or some cold medication, and they're behind locked cages now, so that
Oh,
you
they do that
can't.
in grocery stores. If you go to in Lake Forest, there's a Ralph's
It's
right
not
on El
just Lake
Toro
Forest and
Drive
Ralph's. It's
that
practically
has
everyone.
that has two aisles that are behind plexiglass, and they have a separate checkout there because there's so much theft. You have
Right.
to
They
check
don't.
out
They don't
first.
even trust you to unlock it, hand you the stuff, and then go to the checkout when you're done shopping. You have to check it out right then and there at the grocery store. And it's, I mean, these are cold medications. I mean, already brick and mortar stores are having a tough time dealing and competing against online stores, right? Who have virtually no overhead. They have an electronic web page, and that's their only overhead. The rest is all warehousing and shipping costs. But your local Rite Aid or Ralph's has that too, right? They've got the local warehouse that they truck to this, all the stuff to the stores. And so they already are having a tough time competing against the Amazons of the world. And now they've got to sit there and talk to somebody special, get them to unlock a cage in order to get merchandise to be able to go. It's so much hassle. It's kind of like, forget it. I'll go online and order stuff. I'm not going to go through this hassle of chasing down a store clerk, which there are fewer and fewer of because they can't afford them. Um, you know, and that's all California. That's California regulations. It's California not enforcing the law. Hey, let's make crime illegal again and stick the criminals in jail. Oh, what a novel concept. Oh, you're no, Democrats don't want that. Sorry. I,
No,
I
it's
still
ridiculous.
can't wait to
Yeah,
see
it's
them.
ridiculous. So now Democrats want more increases in crime because in cities like San Francisco and Los Angeles, they want to let bars stay open until 4 a.m. so there can be more fentanyl deaths and more robberies.
And I don't get it. Why do they want to do that?
Um,
Do they get
just
more sales tax from the sale of booze or what?
probably. I mean, don't. I guess they figure that their constituents are all on welfare and they don't go to work, so they can stay at a bar on a Tuesday night till 4 in the morning and don't have to go to work in the morning. I mean, I've been asleep for hours at
Okay.
4 in the morning. I have to work.
Like most of the rest of us. I,
Yeah.
I I don't get it. What's the purpose? Do people kind of leave at 2 and they figure they close at 4? They'll kind of string out all the people that are leaving over the course of 2 hours, and they'll sell more booze in the process.
It's just
I don't get it.
another dumb idea by a dumb party running a dumb state. So ICE arrested an illegal alien that killed a USC student in a hit and run. If that illegal alien had not been allowed into the country and allowed to stay by Biden and Mayorkas and the Democrats, there'd be one more USC student that would be alive today, Scott.
I think we ought to start hanging like a wreath or something uh, on Governor Newsom's door up there in Sacramento, in his governor's office, or something. We had, how you have on a fighter pilot, every time you down an enemy plane, you put a little paint logo on the side. We ought to do that for all the deaths that Newsom's policies have caused with his illegal immigration and his sanctuary state policies. We ought to hang a cross or a wreath or something, and we'll start a tote board on how many people we can chalk up to Governor Newsom and all these deaths are really, they ought to be hung around his neck. Everybody needs to know Governor Newsom, the one who kills residents in favor of illegal aliens.
So, Scott, another crime is where the Democrats want to castrate children because they claim it's a boy who is in a girl's body or a girl in a boy's body, which is just child abuse. So, your buddy, Attorney General Rob Bonta, is attempting to strong arm Children's Hospital of Los Angeles into pushing this euphemistically called gender affirming care, meaning castration, on minors while President Trump is outlawed mutilating children.
Okay, I don't get that. I mean, no, I get it. He's bought into this whole gender ideology crap that gender's fluid. What a moron. Hey, follow the science means there's two sexes. I mean, Trump Trump actually came out and defined a man and a woman when he took office, and it's like I haven't met anybody yet
Now,
that's
now
not
wait a minute,
ideologically
Scott. Time
challenged.
out. Time out. If you are an adult male and you do not know what a woman is, you're an idiot. I don't want you governing me. I don't want you making decisions for me. I don't want you uh, involved in anything I deem important or that would affect me because you're too stupid to risk that.
Hey, my opponent authored the bill to put tampons in the boys' bathrooms. How stupid can you be?
But Scott, we've talked about on the show what happened to those tampon machines that are in boys' bathrooms.
They always get
Ripped
vandalized and
off the
torn
wall,
down.
thrown in the toilet, thrown in the trash can. All right, but I got some good news. But unfortunately, it's not coming from California, but this will affect California. There's a white shoe New York law firm called Milbank, and they struck a deal with Donald Trump um, as one of the major law firms that have now agreed to spend, in case of Milbank, $340 million on pro bono services aligned with President Trump's agenda. 340 million. We've got these liberal law firms that have been, fighting us on all this stuff with this pro bono work. Now, this New York firm, they're really mad about, some of the nonsense going on, especially with the judges declaring nationwide injunctions because they don't like the policy. But
Okay,
this is great news, Scott. This is
so
fantastic news.
first of all, you have to explain to me what's a white shoes law firm? Is that just a high end law firm?
These are the guys that charge 1,500, 2,000 bucks an hour, and they advise Fortune 1,000 companies and Wall Street elite investment
Okay,
banking.
so they're a high end law firm, and
Very high end.
and they've agreed to do this pro bono work specifically to help Trump's policies and initiatives.
Yes, yes.
Give me an example. Who would they defend?
Well, they're willing to fight some of these judges that are saying, we're going to get illegal aliens back in the country.
You mean
We'll fight.
Bozoman, whatever his name is?
That corrupt guy whose daughter's making money on his rulings. Also, in response to tariffs, your corrupt Democrat Governor Gavin Newsom says he wants to work with other countries to try to undermine Trump's tariffs. Clearly, the Constitution gives that power to the federal government.
Well,
So here's Newsom
know you
trying to
don't believe
interfere.
in I know you don't believe in the Logan Act, and that's one of the things that Biden pulled and tried to get Trump on. But basically, the Logan Act says, hey, you can't negotiate on behalf of the State Department if you're just a normal citizen and not working for the government. That's called treason, and you go to jail for it. So,
Well, but the Logan
explain
Act
to me.
hasn't been enforced in over 200 years. So.
I know it. Well, no, it was implemented. I think it was passed in like 1898, so it's not
Oh no, I
quite
think
that
it
old.
was a little earlier than that.
But explain to me how Gavin Newsom is going to have a workaround on Trump's tariffs.
Well, he's not. He's just shooting his mouth off running for president in 2028. And you have this core of baby boomer cat ladies. Boy, we're going to really alienate some people here.
By the way,
Who,
Logan Act, I looked it up, 1799. You're right.
Yeah. So these unmarried, undesirable cat ladies who listen to MSNBC like it's their church are the
cat
ones
ladies.
who are.
When you hear cat ladies, these people that have like 16 cats.
Yes, because they're undesirable. They have no children, and no man would ever want to make children with. And so you've got these are the kind of people that are supporting the Democrats, and the Democrats are pandering to their bigotry and their ignorance. But speaking of pandering and ignorance, AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, is doing a tour with communist Bernie Sanders. Now, remember, Bernie Sanders was kicked out of a commune for being lazy. So you know how bad a communist is.
Well, no, all the lazy people become communists because everything
But
is
so
at large, right?
AOC and Bernie Sanders are flying to Congressman Kevin Kiley's district in California for a fighting oligarchy event, fighting oligarchy, but she's flying first class, Scott, like an oligarch.
I heard she was really upset. She found out that ICE had all these detention centers outside the 7-Elevens, an ice machine.
Well, as you if you watched Hannity, Senator John Kennedy from Louisiana said
Yeah, my
AOC
hero. He's great.
is why they have directions on shampoo bottles now.
Rinse, wash, no, wash, rinse, and repeat.
All right, so now another great thing is that our federal government, now that we have some sanity, is they have kicked out 3 dozen California university students and alumni, and they just kicked out a bunch and revoked the visas of these troublemaking foreigners at San Diego State, Mike Netter's college. And so, Scott, I think that there are more and more calls. You know, Xi's daughter, President, the commie dictator from China,
Xi
his daughter goes
Jinping.
to Harvard. Yeah, and so we got to kick all these Chinese
We
students
let
out
her. We let her in the stinking country.
at
Get
Harvard.
her out
We
of
got to
here.
kick all these people out and give those college uh, opportunities to
Visas.
our own citizens, our own American citizens. Scott.
What a novel concept. So wait a second.
Well,
So these ones at San Diego State, these are the ones that are protesting Gaza and River to the Sea folk and all that other crap against the anti-Semites, or what?
crazy. So I guess they moved the event from Auburn to Folsom. Mr. Producer informs us, but still, by the way, Mr. Producer, in Folsom, there's a kind of a nice street there with some nightlife and some nice social places going on. I have a friend that has his business there, at least for now. You know, they're scaring all the business people out of
It's,
California. But
well, they also have a very good-sized prison, state prison there.
well, and you know, we have some politicians that need to go there. But speaking of prison, you know, we're hearing all of these revelations from Doge and the federal government about all this money laundering and theft and self-dealing, where these politicians and these judges are acting in ways that enrich their friends and family members. But Scott, when do the arrests start? I'm getting impatient. When are we having arrests of all these politician criminals?
Well, that's one of the things that Bill Asali, by the way, Bill Asali, for those of you that don't remember, was an assemblyman from the Riverside area, Inland Empire area. And he was one of the very brave, outspoken Republicans that are up in Sacramento. And so we really hate to see him leave the assembly. But as we can see already, he's going after the homeless money that was misplaced and misused. I mean, he's going to use his position as the U.S. attorney in the Central District to really hold the Democrats' feet to the fire. And hey, oh well, I lost my $24 billion. Wait a minute. Some of that money was federal funds. You got to account for it. And by the way, we're going to check to see how much of it went to your buddy, like Judge Bozeman's daughter, who worked for the organization that he required them to give money to, or something along those lines, allegedly. Uh, so yes, I want to see people go to jail, and I think Bill Asali is going to go out there and start sending people to jail. Michael Gates, our city attorney from Huntington Beach, got tapped by Trump to go to the Department of Justice, and he's working in the Civil Rights Division. And I think that's one of the things he's going to be doing is trying to implement voter ID law on a national basis, or at least try to stop that voter fraud. So we've got good people going to strategic positions, and I'm with you. When do the arrests start? I want to see the arrests start to drop.
So, do you have a prediction of when we're going to start, other than the people who are shooting up Tesla dealerships and lighting things on fire?
Oh, those are mostly peaceful protests.
Yeah, that's what MSNBC was saying in 2020 for the George Floyd. Now,
BLM
here's another
riots.
thing: George Floyd was going to die of fentanyl anyway. You have all these Minneapolis police officers that are saying they were told to lie. When does that injustice get fixed?
Yeah, I see that Turning Point USA is, and Charlie Kirk's done several shows with the officer who had his knee on George Foreman, who was put away by a jury in 22 minutes for murder. And he's bringing out a lot of facts that never came out in the case that shows that, I don't know, I didn't watch the show, but that sounds to me like there's an injustice there that needs to be corrected, and that he was certainly not given a fair trial. Uh, Everybody assumed he was guilty. Everybody saw the partial video, and nobody likes what happened, and nobody wants, wanted George Foreman to die. But
George Floyd.
Floyd, excuse me, nobody wanted him to die. On the other hand, like you said, the autopsy showed he had a lot of fentanyl in his system, and whether that policeman was on his neck or not, and how much of it was because of his training or whatever, I don't want to rehash any of that, but there's a good shot that he may have died anyway, even without
Well, he
that
had
problem.
a multiple of a lethal fentanyl dose. He was going to die anyway.
Yeah,
So,
and
so the
and
real cause of death is, and I've got another thing to say. All these people, Black Lives Matter, that money was stolen. They conned these dumb white liberals that
corporations.
run these corporations to give them money. And so BLM stands for building larger mansions. They stole the money, and you idiot woke CEOs gave them the money to steal.
I thought it was buy
So,
lots of mansions, but yeah, something like
so,
that.
so that means that if their shareholders and their board can't trust them to manage their companies either, Scott.
No, they should be fired for their stupidity. The fact that they jumped on that bandwagon and gave away corporate money and assets showed they were incompetent to do their job. They should be gone.
It's ridiculous. But let's talk about judges as we close the show today. You have all these federal judges, 170 lawsuits, and these judges are just basically acting like dictators and trying to issue nationwide injunctions. Today, the House of Representatives passed a bill to stop that. We'll see if it goes through the Senate. Of course, Trump will sign it. But they're trying to run out the clock. We can't have a situation where judges issue these kind of injunctions. In fact, the Supreme Court really made a bad ruling 9-0 today. Some guy the Department of Justice said was sent mistakenly, an illegal alien who was from El Salvador, to that El Salvador prison. They said, well, you need to try to bring him back. No, every due process, illegal aliens don't get due process. What they get is our shoe in their rear ends to kick them out the door. We don't want
You
you here. We don't want you causing trouble in our country. We don't want you committing crimes in our country. We don't want you here. Get out and stay out and never come back.
Pam
We don't
Bondi.
want you.
I saw a press conference of Pam Bondi, and she's wonderful. She's excellent. She is a smart lady, and the reporter asked the question just like what you phrased it as. Uh, what I I understand that the Supreme Court said that these people get due process rights. How are you going to give them due process rights when they're in a prison in El Salvador? And Pam Bondi goes, no, the order doesn't say they get due process rights. The order says that they get habeas corpus rights, which means they get to have within 24 hours there, which is what habeas corpus is, right? They get to know what they're charged with and why they're charged with it, and what the repercussions are for that. But they don't get due process rights. Those non-citizen aliens in El Salvador don't have the same rights as a citizen has. They are not allowed to go. They don't have a First Amendment right. They don't have any of those rights in the United States. We don't owe them anything. It's reserved for citizens or legal residents. When are people going to get this straight? We invite somebody into the country, and then like these students that you're talking about at San Diego State, and then they protest and disrupt everything that's going on in the country. Well, uninvite them, kick them out of the country. They have no rights. They have no free speech rights. What's going on?
Well, what's going on is they want to take over our country. They want it, and this will be controversial. Hey, we haven't said anything controversial yet on this program today, Scott.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
right.
the globalist World Economic Forum socialists want
The
to
Warren Buffetts
flood.
of the world, yeah.
They want to flood Western countries with third world illegal aliens, vote for them even though they're not eligible to vote, and create a permanent socialist majority where they subjugate Western values, Christianity, Western culture, and some of it is anti white.
And these are
And
mostly non-Christian, brought up in socialist countries. They don't know any difference, and they go in there and demand their free speech rights.
no, they want to take over. They want to Islamify these countries and prevent us from having a Christian religion. All right, here's something controversial. When I
Don't forget they
well, hold
multiply
on.
like rabbits too.
Okay. When I transferred from at Caltech, we had an honor code. You took your exams by yourself. And the theory was if they couldn't trust you with an exam, if they couldn't trust what's in your lab book, they didn't want you as a scientist and they didn't want you at Caltech. So when I transferred to USC in the engineering school,
Wait a minute. How do you take an exam by yourself?
you're given an amount of time and you're on the honor system that you only spend that much time on your exam.
Oh, so they give it to you, you take it home, do it on
Yes,
your own at home.
bring it back.
So it's like homework.
Yeah,
But you're supposed to time yourself.
yes, and not spend more than the time. You're on the honor system.
How do they know if you do or don't?
You're on the honor system. If they can't trust you, they don't want you.
Well, let's say that you get away with it. You're all 4 years and you've lied and cheated and no one caught you.
Let me finish the story.
Okay.
So when I transferred to USC, there was a large contingent of Muslim students from the Middle East. And in Islam, it's okay to lie, cheat, and steal to a non-Muslim because they consider us not real people. We're not
Oh no,
human.
it's not just allowed. It's actually required by Allah.
So there is no way to coexist in a civilized country with primitive Sharia law that's based on the evil Quran. There is no way to coexist with these people peacefully and effectively.
Right. They do not have the
So,
same values as we do,
so my
period.
first quiz at USC was in a math class. And three of these guys were sitting over to my left, I'll never forget it, talking like you and I are talking right now during the test and pointing to each other's papers. And another one was the
Were they
TA.
speaking in Arabic or were they speaking
Of
in
course they
English or
were.
what?
Of course they were.
Okay.
And I look at the TA and I point to him and I point to them and he just shrugged his shoulders. Hey, we're Muslims. We don't care. We know we're cheating. And that was it. I lost it. I stood up and I pointed at that guy and I said, either you
You
stop it.
pointed to the teaching assistant?
Yes. I said, either you stop it or I will. And I want to tell all you foreign students, we don't cheat in my country. You're in my country and you're guests. And I will grab your paper and I will rip it up if you cheat. Watch me. And none of you are tough enough to deal with a redneck from America.
Well,
And
what's
I
the end
said,
of the
and I
story?
point to the three guys cheating. I said, you shut up or I'll shut you up. And I said, that goes to the rest of your foreign students. I'm not going to allow any cheating the rest of the semester. So I go to the teacher who's ready to retire, old guy, tell him, he says, oh yeah, those damn Arabs cheat all the time. They knew it, but they were paying enough money to where the guy was willing to retire and not make a wave, and they didn't care. They weren't going to enforce it.
Hey, it's your alma mater. What did you do?
I told you what I did. No one was willing to do anything about it.
Well, did any of them cheat in the class while you were there?
Uh, well, here's how I handled it. The next class, we had electromagnetics, and I was 6 standard deviations above the mean. So I walked into the final exam with a beer, and the TA says, "How come you're drinking a beer during the exam?" I said, my average is 98 and a half. I'm 6 standard deviations above the class average, which was like 30. I said, what difference does it make? I don't even have to show up today. He says, then why are you showing up? I said, so I can flunk out all the foreign students by raising the curve. And then I toasted him.
And you did it while you're drinking a beer.
You bet I did. And I got either 100 on the final or pretty close to it. So
well, that almost
my
brings up another
revenge
issue.
was hopefully I flunked some of those guys out.
That brings up another issue, which we won't talk about, but I have a pet peeve about grading on a curve when you're talking about black and white math and engineering principles. It's either you know it or you don't. Screw you.
No, because the teachers are lazy and they can give you an
I know.
exam.
I know that
You cannot finish in the time frame, and so they want to curve it So they may think you can only finish a third of the questions. I think that's stupid test administration, but that's how they do it. And remember, most of these guys are researchers in universities. They don't have teaching credentials. They didn't learn how to
They
get
don't know
it.
how to teach. No,
They don't know what they're
I
doing.
agree.
And most of them don't care. So my first class at Caltech, I walk in, I'm 17 years old. I'm sitting in this big lecture hall. And this teacher, his pants were like 8 inches too high. So you could see his white socks and some of his ankle, right?
He had mom pants on.
So anyway, well, this is, back in the day when nobody did that. So um, he's throwing boards up and down, and he says, this class is really trivial. Let's get on to my interesting research. And I raised my hand. He said, "Oh, like a question." I said, "I'm 17 years old. This is my first class in college. And this class is not trivial to me. So could we focus on the course materials instead of your research and paying particular attention and emphasis on those that we're going to be tested on?" He says, "Oh, you can just read the book for that. It's so trivial. This class is trivial."
What were we paying money
And
to go to Caltech for then?
well, that's why I left. But the book, the authors were Dickerson, Gray, and Haight. He was Dickerson. So when I get to USC, the book that he said was trivial was the freshman chemistry book at USC that he had written. So anyway, there's a lot of incompetence in institutions.
Oh yeah,
And
all
in
those
closing,
institutions need to go.
in closing,
Get rid of federal funding and federal loan
no, but
guarantees,
if we've talked
and let
about
them
anything
compete.
here, the bigger the institution, the more incompetence and corruption there is. We need smaller government, less money. If you have more money in government, you have more corruption. Everything
Okay,
government does has an extortion tax and a corruption tax.
so we're out of time. So the big question I've got for you is: are you tired of winning yet?
No, I am not. I'm loving winning.
And I want to win more, and I want to win quicker, and I want these stupid a-hole judges to get out of our way so that we can implement what we've elected them to go for. Ding, 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 ding.
All right, guys. We hope to see you next week, 6:30 on Thursday. And it'll be Maundy Thursday. We'll be celebrating the resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ.
Hey, this is California Free Radio. We're here behind the blue curtain, and we're letting everybody know and shine the light of day on what the Democrats are doing in California so that it doesn't happen in your state. And we need you to tune in every week. Give us a thumbs up and tell your friends about us. 6:30 next Thursday.
We'll see you then.